Hello, welcome to Veterans Talk here on Sparks 1524. I'm Nathaniel Miller. Mach 2 Max has gone ashore, and the rest of us have the watch. Patricia Maxine Millette was a naval officer and very proud of it during the Vietnam War. She was one of only a tiny fraction of American women that were in uniform during that conflict, and it was an accomplishment she always cherished. The course of her duties enabled her to take a ride in a McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II back in 1966, during which she became the first woman in history to fly over the speed of Mach 2. McDonnell Douglas officially recognized her with the call sign Mach 2 Max. She was fluent in at least 3 languages that I know of: English, Thai, and Spanish. During her own career, while she was active duty and later, she would teach English to foreign students at the Defense English Language Institute. Later on, she worked as a federal civilian at Eglin Air Force Base for, just a few decades. Her husband, Tom Millette, was an Air Force officer, a man she often described as her knight in cotton Bermuda shorts. He loved Bermuda shorts. I knew Mach 2 Max simply as Mrs. Millette, Marie's mom. I actually met Marie through my brother. He'd met her first, introduced me. She and I got to know each other pretty well, mainly because we were in the same class. And by our junior year, she and I were fast friends and kind of becoming part of the core of a little group of misfit friends. There was nothing romantic there, and I can prove it by the simple fact that in September of 1988, I introduced her to a friend of mine named Michael. They became high school sweethearts, and they have been married for well over 20 years and have 4 amazing daughters. We ended up always hanging out at my house or at Marie's house. Both sets of parents, my parents and Marie's parents, really, as I found out as an adult, they rather have the kids over tearing up the VCRs till late, on Friday and Saturday nights and hang out on street corners. Both sets of parents, Tom and Pat on Marie's side and my folks, shocked the daylights out of a number of our friends. Marie is used to her parents talking to her. My brother and I were used to our parents talking to us. Our parents insisted on having real conversations. A number of our friends weren't used to that and were shocked when at either house the parents would walk in and actually engage in a real conversation. They demanded more than monosyllabic answers. Marie's folks and my folks demanded real sentences in return. But they also, unlike a lot of adults, showed interest in everything we were saying. They engaged us like young adults. Very quickly, most of our friends didn't want to go anywhere else to hang out but my house or Marie's house. The philosophy of our parents worked because everybody in our little gang actually has grown up to have healthy, successful lives. Once in a while, Marie's mom would come in acting like the stern matriarch, like she was upset with something while we're doing something really rebellious, like watching our 3rd Star Trek movie in a row. She'd walk into the TV room at Marie's house, ask us something, and one of us would answer, and then she would zing us with some complete, utter one-liner you wouldn't expect, even out of somebody like me, laugh, and leave. And we're all like, Marie, your mom's crazy. We like her. And I've had people tell me that about my parents. Man, your dad, your mom, they're crazy. We like them. It worked. We all turned out, because of the investment these 2 sets of high school parents made in us, we all turned out healthy and successful. Doesn't mean our lives have been easy or perfect, but all of us in that gang have overcome everything life thrown at us, and we're still moving forward. I lost touch with Marie and Mike and her parents after graduation. I mean, that happens. Life goes on, but I reconnected with them prior to my own marriage back in 2010. My fiance at the time and I met Tom and Pat a number of times and laughed at a lot of stories they told us. Sadly, my own marriage didn't last, but my fiance and I are the classic better friends than married type couple. But even so, now my ex-wife, we're still good friends, and we still laugh at some of the stories Tom and Pat told us about their honeymoon or their adventures together after Pat left the Navy and Tom continued his Air Force career. I was able to reconnect with Pat again in 2017 after I retired from the Navy. Now, by this point, Tom had sadly passed away in 2016. Pat didn't have some great, epic, easy, moving into a new phase of life like you'd see on a TV show. It was hard for her. She and Tom had been married well over 30 years. They were best friends. They were lovers. They were partners. Moving forward was not easy for her. And she also made no secret of that. She told me when I visited her that she'd been having a lot of trouble with depression, with sadness, with getting herself moving. She's sitting there telling me this in 2017 while having bright blue hair. Literally, bright blue hair. She then laughed and told me that she'd always wanted to be a little blue-haired old lady, so she went with it. And then showed me that this woman was still one of the most profoundly wise women I've ever met this side of my own mother. Pat told me that she was having trouble moving forward, and she knew she needed to do things to go forward with her own life because she was still alive. She still needed to live for herself. She had grandkids she wanted to interact with. She had a daughter and a son-in-law she adored. Old kids from the high school gang like me that would come back and reconnect. She had things to live for, and she found that dyeing her hair silly colors was a very small, but for her, significant way of taking another step forward every day. That particular visit, she had bright blue hair. She told me the next week she was going pink, and when I saw the photos, did she ever go pink? Leave it to Pat, otherwise known as Mach 2 Max, to find the wisdom in dyeing one's hair. But that was the kind of woman she was. Another thing she taught us was to live in the now. And this is something we as veterans can actually embrace and share better than a lot of people with the people in our communities, be they fellow veterans or others. We all know what it's like to have to compartmentalize our emotions to get the mission done, especially if we're in a life-threatening situation. Especially if we've gone through something where our shipmates or fellow soldiers, battle buddies, are injured. We've got to compartmentalize those emotions and stay in the now, get that mission done. Well, of course, we know the downside of this is getting trapped, being unable to feel, unable to connect with our emotions, being detached, or having bursts of anger, depression, some things that I'm wrestling with, and I make no secret of it. But Pat showed us that living in the now is still something that's important to do, even in civilian life, because life is happening in the now. Her granddaughters were growing up in the now, and she wanted to be part of that. Mike and Marie have had a pretty successful career around the country before they ended up relocating back here to Niceville, or back to Niceville. I'm in Pensacola, excuse me. And they're living in the now. Pat never shied away from her past. But I really wouldn't find this out until actually after she passed, because every time she interacted with me, she wanted to know what was happening now. What am I doing right now? This is what her granddaughters are doing now. She was in the now. She didn't ignore the past by any means. But her focus was always living in the now. And that philosophy is what helped her get through Tom's death and moving forward in her own life for these last few years until she finally has passed away and joined Tom in the great beyond. And because that philosophy, she left this world with very few regrets. When it was her time to move on, she could look in the proverbial mirror and know that she had spent the time with the granddaughters, the time with her own daughter and her son-in-law, the time with the high school kids who come back to visit, because she focused on the now. She accepted the reality that those things sometimes suck. I mean, come on, this was a woman who was active duty during the Vietnam era. You think she didn't see things suck as a veteran the way people treated veterans, much less as she was treated as a woman? She never pretended life was all peaches and roses. She just refused to let the crap hold her back. She refused to let the past dominate her. Pat Millett knew how to live in the now almost better than anybody. And she did it without sacrificing any of the past. She was proud of her service. She was very proud of the fact that she held up a little... Back in her day, during ceremonial occasions, when she was in uniform, the men in her class and at officer training course for ceremonial occasions would draw swords and, present swords. The women wouldn't. They would just stand off to the side in formation. Pat didn't like that. So what she did was she went out and found a letter opener that looked like a little sword. And at one ceremony, the men get up, unsheath, and present swords. She gets up, unsheathes, and presents a little letter opener. She made her point very clearly in a very humorous way. And although that wasn't some earth-shattering moment of feminist victory, what it was one of those moments where a woman stepped up in a very creative way to make a point to her male and female peers about how things should be run. And it's the thousands of women like Pat who would do those small things that kept the momentum going, that the leaders of the feminist movement that broke these ranks open for women. They got the doors open, but it was the thousands of women like Pat who would do those small things to keep building to enable us to get to a point where now a woman is going to be the lead officer in the United States Coast Guard. That's a great lesson to live in the now, because this is where everything is happening. This is where the people that we know and love are, in the now. She never forgot Tom when he passed. She never forgot him. She missed him every day. She accepted that she was going to every day. She told me that first time I got to see her after he died and she had the blue hair. She told me every day she was going to miss him and she knew it, but she couldn't be afraid of that. And that was actually one of the things she said she was wrestling with, was that fear of having that grief every day. She knew it was real and it was going to be that way, and she was trying to find a way to integrate it as just a part of her life that had to happen without it defeating her. And for her, among other things, dyeing her hair silly colors was one small way to go forward and do that. And she did. Mach 2 Max has passed into history and gone ashore. We have the watch now, and it's our turn to teach each other and the next generation to live in the now. As veterans, we have all seen some very hard times. Some of us have been in direct combat where we were shot at. Some of us have been in combat operations where it was just high stress. Some of us have been assaulted in the workplace, either physically or sexually. We've all been through a lot, some more than others, but all of us have some baggage. All of us have stories that inform who we are in the now, and those stories are important. Those events are important, and they should never be erased, and nobody should ever tell you to erase them. But Mach 2 Max, Pat Millett, definitely showed the best way to prioritize them. They're important, but we're alive here in the now. This is where everything's happening, and that's what Pat wanted to live in. And she went to her grave a happy and content woman because she focused on the now and the people in the now. Marie and her family are in mourning, but at the same time, Marie is her mother's daughter. She's not going to give up. She's not going to stop living. She's going to go forward, and who knows the people that she's meeting now that her daughters are bringing home as they go through their life. Who knows which of those kids are going to grow up to an adult to come back and visit Marie when Marie is an old woman, and maybe tell Marie, you taught me how to live in the now and not let the past and not let bad things, the sad and the bad things happen hold me back. The sad and the bad happen, but they don't have to hold us back. Pat Millett showed us how. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that little like and the subscribe button. If you think it's worthwhile, please feel free to share it. If you'd like to read a little more on this, my column about Mach 2 Max is linked below in the description. Have a great day, and always remember to go and do great things.